Good day and welcome back to another DBZ Dokkan Battle video. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the team build, or my team build, for one of the best teams in the game, the Majestic Monkey team, otherwise known as Giant Ape Power. Now Giant Ape Power is an absolute powerhouse of a team, but it is an incredibly limited one. It's one of those teams that's really fun to run if you have all the right units, and not so fun to run if you don't have all the right units. Unfortunately, it's going to be a tight affair if you're looking for kind of rotational units. Your best lead is going to be the AGL Super Saiyan 3 Super Saiyan 4 Goku. If you don't have him, you can run alternative leads in the form of the SS4 Goku Vegeta, or obviously the GT Heroes SS4 Goku. But to be honest with you, you're not going to end up having a really good time, because you're going to be missing some of these crucial Super Saiyan 4 and Giant Ape Power units. So it's just one of those things. In terms of basically the general kind of constitution of the team, since we only really have one lead that I would suggest, you're going to be kind of stuck with that one. Outside of that as well, in terms of tanks, we have two very clear favorites. We have the Vegeta Giant Ape, who's a fantastic tank, especially alongside Super Saiyan 4 Goku, but we'll get there. And we have the SS4s from the 7th Annie. Now people might think it's a bit weird that I mention them as tanks, but they are very clearly tanks. They tank amazingly first turn. They stack so quickly that they handle everything with relative ease. Right now, they are definitely the second, if not the tankiest option on Giant Ape Power, and I think it's obvious that they are definitely tanks. Now, in terms of floaters, that's where things get pretty interesting. In terms of floaters, you only really have 5 options, which is what kind of makes this team its incredibly limited kind of team build. If you don't have the Dragon Ball Heroes units, you're essentially stuck with just the Int Super Saiyan 4 Goku. And although I like Int Super Saiyan 4 Goku, and I think he is still usable in the hardest content, although obviously with some mitigating circumstances, I do find that ultimately, to be honest with you, outside of the Heroes units, you're pretty much stuck with him as the only choice right now. And this is where I think people talk a lot about, about Giant Ape Power. It's one of those categories that is super duper fun, but feels like you are basically running on thin ice with trying to find substitutions. Now the two GT Heroes EZAs are great. The Goku and the Vegeta are great floaters. They do exactly what you expect them to do. They change orbs, they do damage, they're consistent, they're strong defensively, they do everything you want them to do, so it's not like a huge problem in any way, shape or form, but it's more or less the fact that outside of those initial 5 units, the GT EZAs, Gogeta, Goku SS4 AGL, and obviously Vegeta, you're stuck really struggling for that 6th option. That's where the Heroes units really come in to help out. People who have the Heroes units know that a lot of them have very good baseline damage reduction. Gohan, Vegito, and well, both Vegetos have those 30-40% damage reductions. Now when you add in the 10% from the AGL SS4 Goku, obviously that makes them pretty tanky, because they do raise defense and that makes them good floaters. Not to mention the physical SS4 Vegito has 30% support for the category, so I think you find a lot of people enjoy running him because of the synergy that he brings, because of the strength in terms of operation that he brings, and I think that's something that, yeah, I can definitely respect when I'm looking at building a team. However, because of the limitations of trying to run DB Heroes units and the uncertainty around their banners coming back, I think most players will be stuck with Int SS4 Goku. Now, is GT Heroes a better alternative than Giant Ape Power? Well, right now, I don't think so. For me personally, honestly, I would say that, yeah, Giant Ape Power is probably the better version of GT Heroes, Although you might want to run GT Heroes if you're absolutely short on these units. I think GT Heroes is going to get a revamp, and I do think Daima is going to release an SS4 unit this year. So just keep your eyes on that floater space, because I think we are going to get something that's going to make this team go from being quite limited in terms of options to being a little bit less limited, but really have that final finishing piece that the team is missing. But for now, SS4 is still a very suitable replacement. I've used him to beat various red zones. I've used him to beat various different events. He is more than fine. He will be okay. You don't need to worry about anything. You don't need to worry about him. Everything is going to be absolutely fully perfect and fully good to go. So yeah, really I wouldn't worry about it. Now in terms of just the best kind of functionality in terms of support memories, you're looking at mainly the GT Hero support memory. It encompasses obviously most characters on the team. You could look for something generic like the Belma healing item. Of course, that is always helpful and gives you a little bit of a boost. Or you can look for maybe a Bond the Parent and Child. Or potentially you can look for something like the Goku's family or Vegeta's family. But personally, I would just go Bond the Parent and Child, or GT Heroes, or the Belma one, depending on what support memories you're obviously looking to incorporate into your team. So let's talk about rotations and how you should really set things up. So let's talk about the rotations in two stages. There's the rotations before the transformation of AGL Super Saiyan 4 Goku, and there's the rotations afterwards. Now they don't change a lot, like functionally they're still the same, but you're a lot more rigid post his transformation. So before transformation he is a great support, but he doesn't give the damage reduction, he doesn't give the 2-turn support. So you can feel free to kind of move him, the easy A's for the GT heroes, kind of around a little bit. So you can move AGL Goku, the physical Goku, the Int Vegeta, the Int SS4 Goku as well. You can move around, just kind of let them get into whatever position suits them best defensively. It's at this point that you should set up at least each rotation with Tech Vegeta and the SS4 duo. That's your primary focus early on in any fight and any really hard event. An added bonus would be trying your best to get into SS4 Goku his 5 hits. If you can sacrifice a bit of damage early on to allow SS4 Goku to kind of get those 5 hits, you can always immediately transform with SS3 AGL Goku. So it's never like a absolute, it's never like an absolute restriction or anything. You can get, kind of better as you go along by incorporating those units. Now, the important thing is going to be when that health does drop, or when you do hit that turn threshold. That's going to be when Goku comes online, truly comes online. Remember, when Goku transforms, he gives you 70% defense, full power beyond Super Saiyan and Giant Ape Power. That's huge on its own, but then he also gives you 10% damage reduction, which is even bigger in terms of functionality. So it's really a big kind of double-edged situation. And I think for me, looking at kind of your team build, once you are looking to transform Goku, which you should do at your earliest convenience, you do need to have them on either side of the rotation. So you need to have one rotation with an SS4 AGL Goku and the other rotation with an SS4 AGL Goku. This is because each rotation is going to give you 44% attack and defense for the next turn. So by having them on different rotations, you can kind of set yourself up to pretty much be in a very strong strategic position. If you get into an emergency, you don't feel like using the AGL SS4s, you do have Vegeta's transformation. Now Vegeta's transformation shouldn't be used immediately. I did here, but you shouldn't use it immediately, and there's a couple reasons why. Firstly, Vegeta's transformation is just a free turn to eliminate damage. That's basically all it is, and his form does actually do a fair consideration of damage. The reason you want to use his Giant Ape form after the Goku transformation is because Goku's 2-turn buff will apply to his Giant Ape form's attack stat, but also because you can then use Vegeta's Giant Ape form later on in the event to potentially kind of get rid of any debuffs or any negative situations for your team. For example, you can use that Vegeta to soak up super attacks. Remember, Giant Ape forms still count as the same turn when they expire. So if a boss is limited to 2 supers per turn, and you use a Giant Ape form and soak up both of them, then you're not going to be able to take a super once a Giant Ape form expires. So Vegeta is a great way of kind of limiting that big damage that you can take during supers, which is really good, and I think for me overall shows, at least functionally, that there is merit to holding on to Vegeta's Giant Ape form more than anything else. Now that's not to say that you can't use it early on, but my suggestion would be to rather have AGL Goku transform early, utilize those transformations as best you can, and then kind of take things from there. I think it'll be the best point of call. Now, obviously, once Goku transforms, that's when the rotations get a lot more set in stone. So that's when the rotations go from being, okay, these rotations are a bit flexible, I want Goku to be here, I want this to happen, I'm setting up my tanks, to being, no, this has to be absolutely set in stone. So you only have 2 rotations, or 2 members of each rotation that are absolutely mandatory to be there. The physical SS4s and the AGL Goku on one, and it's the AGL Goku and the Giant Ape Vegeta on the other. That is absolutely all you need, and that is imperative that you have those units set on those rotations. Without that, you do tend to kind of fall off a bit. Things don't tend to work out so well. It's the synergy between their positional play. Vegeta will have 70% damage reduction when he is in those rotations. The SS4s will have huge levels of defense with their stacking. The Gokus are very protected in the slot too, and all the floaters benefit from having multiple variants of the 2-turn rays. Remember, one Goku's 2-turn rays will exist at the same time the one in the second rotation fires. So all floaters essentially run around with an 88% attack and defense buff. This is something that's very crucial and changes units from being moderately tanky to being immensely tanky, just because of the fact that they're running with such big, amazing boosts on. And I think that's something that players shouldn't discount when they're positioning this team. It's what makes it so rigid, but also suits it so well with its limited roster. And I think that's ultimately probably my best point of call for this. I think the team really just comes together, even in those moments with a limited roster, and does an absolutely amazing job. So I think that's really, really good. Now, in terms of the units themselves, let's talk a little bit about, what they bring to the table. Now, Goku and Vegeta are a floating pair that really just do their roles to utmost perfection. Goku Super Saiyan changes orbs super duper amazingly, and he also does very consistent damage and defense very consistently. Vegeta changes orbs, does very consistent damage, and after Super, tanks very, very well. They're both kind of exactly the same, but with slight variations. For example, Goku slightly better offensively, Vegeta slightly better defensively, but ultimately at the end of the day, both units are insanely consistent. I think that's where, at least for me, I find these units are, I don't want to say like absolutely broken, but just function so well. And for me, that's really their biggest strength. They're not maybe amazing, but they are absolutely consistent. Like, they are amazingly consistent. And I think for me, that's when it's like, oh wow, these guys are really bringing something to the table. The orb changing also has great merit. Outside of helping themselves, it also helps their team, and it really helps the SS4 Gogeta, because the SS4 Gogeta benefits from Rainbow Orbs, and by giving him this kind of platform of very good orb changes that just provide him with a little bit more Rainbow Orbs than he provides himself, it really gives him a good foundation and makes him consistently be an incredibly good tank. And then finally we talk about the king himself, the absolute most important unit in this team, at least for me, tie with SS3 Goku. I think SS3 Goku is by far and away the best support in the game, and I do genuinely think he is probably not the best unit in the game, but he's top 5, and he is definitely the best or most important unit to this team. No unit on this team, maybe barring the physical SS4s, truly functions without the SS3 AGL Goku. He is so imperative to this team that you cannot run it without him. But the SS4s are really the leaders, especially offensively. Once they transform, things get really out of hand, and they absolutely bring pure domination to the table. They are just an absolute powerhouse, a great team that just does a ton of incredibly good stuff. So I, for one, think they're very good. I think they are a set of like easy aid units that just absolutely dominate and control. And I think when you transform into that Gogeta and you get that active skill going off, and you just have such strong prevalence and like such a strong position as a slot 1, I just think you don't really have a lot of problems. That forcing super attacks, most powerful skill that units can have in the game, as many players will know. That ability to nullify supers so consistently, the way they can have such huge peaks of damage, and just in general their defensive solidity is really something that I think is truly insane. Like, I think it's really impressive to me how good they are. Like, they're so consistent, they're so strong, so powerful as a unit, and the offense is huge, especially the turn of the active. Like, you just get such good, valuable input that really, for me, it's, how can I say, just such powerful consistency. And I think, in my eyes at least, it's what lends them to being probably my leading light of this team alongside AGL Goku. Everyone knows this roster is very limited, but these guys are doing incredibly good heavy lifting as both a fantastic tank and an excellent damage dealer. You can get units like Vegeta and Broly, who are great tanks and do good damage. 20 million, 30 million is good damage. But you need that exceptional unit that's going to do 40 million, 45 million, 50 million, multiple supers, multiple crits. You need that kind of unit now in the Dokkan meta. Like, to take on these super hard events, you need that kind of unit, and without them, it's just not really something you're going to, get away with very, very often. So unfortunately, it is one of those things, but I think overall, for me, this Goku, this Gogeta, and this team is absolutely insane, and I have a ton of fun running them. I know it's a limited roster, but I think it's truly one of my favorite teams in the game, if not my favorite team to run right now. I think everything from its synergy, its movements, the fun of using a double Goku is awesome.